James, a servant of God and of the Lord Jesus Christ, to the 12 tribes in the dispersion, greetings. Greetings, everyone. I'm glad you can join me as we begin a series of lessons in the book of James. Now, James contains lots of practical instructions for the Christian life, things that we can apply to our day-to-day life as we strive to live for God and make it to heaven. Now, I'm going to begin with an introduction to the book of James, and then we're going to get into the first few verses to see the first thing that James has to teach us as we strive to live that Christian life. Now, the book of James was written between 45 and 49 AD. It's likely written by James, the brother of Jesus. I know people, when they first see the word name James there, they immediately think of James the Apostle, the brother of John. But this is very unlikely because he was likely dead by this time. It also shares similar language to Acts chapter 15, which was James, the brother of Jesus. Now, James, the brother of Jesus, was originally a non-believer. We see this in John chapter 7, verse 5, where we see that his brothers didn't actually believe in Jesus when Jesus was performing his ministry here on this earth. He was named specifically by Paul as a witness to the resurrection in 1 Corinthians 15:7. He had become a pillar in the church and was a leader in the church of Jerusalem, according to Galatians chapter 2 and in verse 9. He met with Paul shortly after Paul became a Christian and gave approval to him and sent him on the mission to the Gentiles. We see that in Galatians 1:19 and 2:9. Now, the recipients of this letter is not a specific person or church. It's considered a general epistle because it's kind of just sent out there to Christians on a large base. As written to the 12 tribes of the diaspora, or the dispersion, those who were scattered among the nations. It could refer to Jews scattered since the return from the exile, or those who were scattered after persecution in Acts chapter 7 and chapter 8. Now, the audience would be Jewish Christians. We know that the audience would be Jewish because of the reference to the 12 tribes, and James also has more references to the Old Testament than many letters, and assumes familiarity with the Old Testament among his audience. We can recognize that his audience was Christian because there's no reference to the gospel or how to become a Christian. Faith in Jesus is assumed in James's audience here. Now, the purpose of James' writing here is to encourage people to live out their faith with right actions, not just a right belief, and to teach what a life lived by faith looks like. In James chapter 1, it focuses on perseverance in faith. James chapter 2 focuses on faith requiring good works. And James 3 through 5, we see the unfolding of how to live out our faith. Now, 54 out of the 108 verses found in the book of James are commands. So James isn't focused on theological teachings here, but on practical wisdom for daily living as a Christian. So let's go ahead and get into the first few verses here. Let's start out looking at James chapter 1 and in verse 2. Count it all joy, my brothers, when you meet trials of various kinds. Now, this is a peculiar way to start out this letter, isn't it? What would you think if this was the first time you read this? Count it all joy when you encounter trials. We don't usually think of trials as something to be joyous about. We'd rather have things not happen to us that are going to test our faith and that are going to be troublesome to us. We want things to go well and just be able to be on easy street, right? We don't want to, we consider joy if things are going great. Here he's saying consider it joy when encountering trials of various kinds. It reminds me of the reaction of the apostles over in Acts chapter 5, verses 40 and 41, when they had been captured and they had been beaten for teaching about Jesus, and they sent away being told not to teach any more in his name. And they went away rejoicing they were considered worthy of suffering for the name of Christ. And so we see that they rejoiced because they were suffering for their faith. It kind of reminds me of that. Let's go ahead and see what James is getting at as we get into verses 3 through 4 now. For you know that the testing of your faith produces steadfastness. And let steadfastness have its full effect, that you may be perfect and complete, lacking in nothing. So why does James say we should count it joy when we encounter various trials? It's because of the testing of our faith produces endurance. It shows our faith to be real. Remember Job. Satan accused his faith of being weak, and only because God had given him all the things that he needed. He said, if you took away all the different blessings that you gave Job, he would surely curse you. It's easy to have faith when everything is going well. What shows true faith is remaining faithful through hardship. And testing of faith also produces strong character. We see this over in Romans chapter 5, verses 3 through 4. Where Paul writes, not only that, but we rejoice in our sufferings, knowing that suffering produces endurance, and endurance produces character, and character produces hope. And so as we counter various trials, it strengthens our character if we hold fast to God and following His Word. And it also, as James says, when endurance comes along, it has its full effect that we may be perfect and complete, lacking in nothing. We have all that we need when we have that endurance through the trials. And so we count it all joy when we face those trials because it's strengthening our character and it's giving us endurance and it's giving us all that we need to be faithful to God and to lead others to know Him. You see, it's in trials that we grow. And so I want to encourage you, if you're facing trials today, don't be disheartened by those trials, but instead count it joy and lean on the Lord to help you through those times. Allow that to be a faith-strengthening moment and a character-strengthening moment as you face those various trials. And look for the ways that your trials that you're facing today might be able to help others in the future. As always, I hope you have enjoyed this lesson that's given you something to think about. And I hope you will continue to join us as we look at the book of James. If you haven't already done so, you can also look at the series of Romans. You can go ahead and watch those videos and then continue watching with us as we look through the book of James in the coming weeks. As always, I hope you have a great week. God bless you.